So first, I'll do the very basic, easy one, which is hello, I'm Catherine Trendacosta. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I am going to be talking with Preeti today. Preeti, you want to introduce yourself and give a little background on what you do?
Sure. My name's Preeti Chhibber. I am a writer, both of I guess, geek culture stuff and also fiction across prose and comics. And I'm also a podcaster for myself with independent podcasts and for Marvel. Yeah, I have my as with so many, I think of us, I have my hands in a lot of different places, both out of like I want to and necessity. Um, but yeah, I write kids lit, I write comics, I talk about comics, I talk about stuff I like, and that's kind of what I do for a living.
And how did you get started in this? Did you I've talked to people. Did you go through the normal fandom route and into to more talking about it, or how?
I think that people of a certain age, so like sort of like the elder millennial generation, had a very specific timeline in which we grew up on the internet, and we benefited a lot from that in terms of like internet fandom for me was like blowing up when I was in high school. It's like why I learned HTML. It was like how I became like internet friends with a lot of people. At the time, it was like Backstreet Boys fandom was what pulled me into it. But it taught me a lot of skills in terms of how to talk about stuff I loved with strangers, how to literally like code websites, how to use like computer programs to participate in the fandom in the way I saw people participating. And then, so I was doing it on my own just for fun. And once I sort of became a quote unquote grown up and started having to work for a living after I graduated college and stuff, uh, it was at a time where you needed side hustles. Not that you don't need them now, but like this was a very big thing. I was living in New York City on a publishing salary and realized that while I was like writing for fun, like blogging about stuff I liked just for fun, I could parlay that into writing for people who might pay me to do it. And I had the portfolios of like years of being like, I like this stuff. I want to talk about it on my own, like sort of WordPress and those spaces. And so I started writing for Book Riot to talk about books because that's why I moved to New York, was because I loved books and wanted to work in books. And then it sort of went from there where I was able to build a working portfolio and a professional portfolio that got me gigs at sci-fi with sci-fi fangirls, which then that turned into getting more opportunities to like be a person who knew what she was talking about in certain subjects, whether it was like Star Wars or children's literature or whatever. um, and at the time I was being very vocal about how I wanted to write fiction, and so someone got my name to an editor at Disney on the book side who was like, would you want to write a Spider-Man tie-in for this movie? Do you have any proof that you could do it? And I was able to send them pieces that's like, this is my voice. This is how quickly I could write it. And that's sort of how it happened.
You've covered a lot of my next questions. um, but I think it's really interesting the way that I think everyone sort of in this space, me as well, in addition to whatever mainstream thing or more traditional platform we're doing, always holds on to sort of an independent thing that allows us a little bit more control, right? Like you, as you said, like you podcast for Marvel, but you also have your own. Can you sort of talk about why you do that and why it's important to you?
It's funny. I was doing a favor for a friend yesterday and talking to some of his students about podcasting. And one of the questions they asked were like, would you ever want to get sponsorships or have somebody who funded the podcasting? So I have two independent podcasts that I co-host. One is Desi Geek Girls with my friend Swapna Krishna, which is sort of a pop culture podcast from the lens of being South Asian American women. And then the other is Tar Valon or Bust with Jen Northington, where we do like close readings of The Wheel of Time. Like that is the entire podcast. And for both of those, we had, my co hosts and I had conversations about whether we wanted sponsorships. Like Tar Valon or Bust, I remember we were like, maybe we'll pitch it to Book Riot as something Riot New Media could do. And then it all sort of came down to us wanting control of this thing and also not wanting to monetize something that we loved that would then put us in the position of being beholden to a larger entity that could dictate anything about the podcast. Because the second you open yourself up to sponsorship, and of course, there are benefits to sponsorship in terms of you don't have to pay for things, like maybe you could even get paid to do it. But you are opening yourself up to, like, if we had a sponsor like of a certain company, does that mean we can't mention another company? Like it just starts including all these rules that might limit what you're able to say on the podcast. And so for both of those podcasts, we decided to do Patreons instead, which we use as very much just a way to cover costs. Like we're not using them as a source of income, because it's just we wanted to stay as something that we loved and something that didn't all of a sudden turn into an obligation because it turned into something that was money making instead of something that was just about joy.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also think, like, does that come from experience or an instinct? Like, your experience in one realm telling you, like, I don't want to have to change anything about this thing I'm doing, or is it just an instinct about what would happen if you allowed it?
Experience, I think. Part of it is experience. Part of it is bucking up against this idea that we all, I think, struggle with of the immediate need to monetize our hobbies and like have a quote unquote reason to be doing things, to have a productive reason or a monetary reason or whatever it is, and to not just feel okay being like, this time that I'm spending preparing for a podcast that I'm not being paid for is not any less important than the time I spend preparing for something that I will be paid for. So, sort of like forcing myself to push back against that instinct. And then also, I've been co-hosting podcasts for a long time now. And I started out on a podcast that was a Book Riot podcast for the now defunct panels.net. It was a comics podcast that I loved doing with my co-host at the time, Paul Montgomery. It was like weekly, but it was sponsored. And so we had like a lot of, okay, you're going to talk about this book this week. You have to mention this. This is the like sponsorship post, like piece of it that you have to read. You can't talk about this thing because we're doing this on the site over there. So it was just a lot of necessary limitations and corporate limitations, which made sense given they were producing and hosting and paying for this podcast to exist. But so when it came time to like, we want spaces that are truly ours and will not be impacted, it was a no-brainer. It was like, why would we bring other people into this conversation when we know what we have a point of view about what we want it to be and how we want it to exist?
I want to talk about something that you sort of mentioned when you were like, why you learned HTML and all of these things. I think in one of the things that's really interesting to me about fandom and what it gives people and how it sort of ties into a larger internet or tech ecosystem is this sort of like, and it's always been this way back to zines, right? Like this do it yourself, like learn to do these things, learn these skills and build it for yourself because no one else cares and no one else is going to do it for you. And I think it also ties into like both no one else cares as much about this thing as you do, but also I think a lot, especially creative fandom, is a lot often tied to identities that are not the mainstream, and so they already aren't being catered to, so they have to build these spaces for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, when I was like doing this stuff, it's funny because this was when it was like, you don't put your real name on the internet. You don't tell people any truths about who you are. You hide behind your screen name because it's too dangerous to do otherwise. Like, obviously, Facebook, I think was a huge change there. But Facebook came along when I was already in college. So I had like years on the internet of being fairly anonymous in terms of like who I was with relation to the fandom. Like I had all these like friends on AOL and people that we like built sites with on GeoCities and things, and I could not tell you anything about them other than their screen name and that they told me they were teenagers. Like that's all I knew, you know? And so there was this sense of like I'm going to build this thing, but the building was almost at that point like again in like high school for me, which was being able to do it anonymously to an extent, was I want to build this thing because I want to represent my point of view within a community so I get to participate in that community. It was like a way to be an active fan versus a passive fan. Which there's like space for both, I think. Like if you just want to hang out and like enjoy a thing and not participate, like there's plenty of stuff that I do that with. But there are those like things that you want to be active in and you see what other people are doing and you're like, I want to be in a Backstreet Boys web ring. Like, I want to put that banner at the bottom of a page and like feel like I'm a part of something bigger than just like my best friend who loves this group as much as I do. Which then, as obviously the internet evolved and fandoms got bigger and it was easier to find people who were into the thing that you were into, you started see and you were like visible about who you were and there was this sense of like, oh, we have to create this space because no one's going to create it for us. Like, I went to Star Wars Celebration for the first time in 2017. And it was a little jarring walking in I went with Swapna, and it was like very, very few, like comparatively to the wider, to the huge amount of people who were going, it's like few people of color in comparison. And I wrote about this, but like we did a photo op with Riz Ahmed, and I was like, this is wild. Like, it is wild that yesterday I felt like a little unsettled by how, like, sort of non diverse it felt in those rooms to being in this space where everybody's in line to meet this like fellow brown man. Like, so there, I think we've evolved to that point of like now, yeah, there is a lot of like, I'm going to build it because no one's creating the space for me.
I think that's really interesting because like being in that like space and feeling, oh, there are so few people here that look like me. I live that life as well, right? Um but then when you're online and as you said, like you can connect with people even if it is in proportion to like the wider like fandom, it is easier to find other people like that, and that is, I think, incredibly meaningful for some people. It was for me. I know, like, I have a confusing background, and I never felt like I fit in any space. And finding like other people like that really helped me feel like it wasn't weird to be into this and be this thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's that camaraderie. It's that, like, again, that sense of community that once you would have felt like very isolated about and sort of, is there anyone else in the world who likes this thing the way that I like it? Like the internet gave us those connections. I mean, it's funny. Jen, uh, my Tarval and Urbus co-host, and I became friends because in like 2000, I don't know, like 12 or something, or like earlier, she was on Twitter playing. Can we curse on this podcast?
I guess not, maybe.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
she
it's
was
not, it's like
playing.
a YouTube video.
Okay, so she was playing this like Shag, Marry, Kill with specifically Wheel of Time
Yeah.
characters. And I was like engaging with her on it. And she was like, I did not know anyone else was like a nerd like this for the series. Like, do you want to come hang out with me I'm working the release party for the last book? And I was like, yeah, totally. Like, we'd never hung out one on one. Like, we knew each other from like the kind of like book circles in New York. And that started this like decade long friendship that has led to, podcasts. We were on Bookrageous together for a while. I had a short story in an anthology she co-edited that came out a few years ago called Sword Stone Table. Like, it has led to this like wonderfully fruitful friendship, both of just like us hanging out with each other, but also getting to like be co-creators and be people who want to create in the spaces and in the fandoms that we love. And it never would have happened if we weren't both like on this like horrible social media site talking about these characters for a fantasy series.
It's so interesting because like you and I both talk to James Whitbrook, right?
Mhm.
Who edits IO9. James is one of my best friends in the world. We worked together for years. We've met in person 3 times. Like, but we talk constantly because of the internet and the fact that even when I left IO9, I could still keep talking to him every day was incredibly valuable. And like he came and stayed at my parents' house one year, and we went to a concert together. Like, I think it is incredibly important that those things continue because, like as you said, like finding other people who feel about a thing the way you feel is incredibly important. And sort of the other part of it, I think, was when you're like, oh, I want to build it because I want to be a part of this community. It's both like I want to also be in this community, but also being part of a community is also giving back, not just taking, right?
Yes, yes.
Like, I've built this thing too. I think in fandom spaces especially, right? Like the gifting of things or thanking of people who helped you is like a really sort of central part of that experience.
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to like how active you want to be in a particular fandom. I definitely have things that I really enjoy and really love, and the most I do is like lurk the tag on Tumblr. Like, I'm like, I just want to see what other people are doing and like love the things that they're making and see the like wonderful art and the stories and all of those things, but I never like I don't do those. Like, I don't actively create on that level. Uh, but if it is something that you're like, I think you can be as active or as passive as you want when it comes to fandom. But like you said, like you participate in a way where it doesn't mean you have to like make a big thing, but you like leave a comment on someone's fan art to be like, I really loved this. It's as easy as that. That can be the extent of your like participation, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I tended to lurk mainly because I don't consider myself creative in the like sort of traditional fandom ways. In the like, I can't. Fiction is not a thing I am capable of. Drawing is not a thing I am capable. Like those sorts of skills, but things I did do is like beta read things. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a skill that I had, right? I
Mhm.
could offer and was quiet. Like there are things that anyone can do, and it felt like I want to help this person that I know and like. I want to be able to support their creativity in a way, and I think that that's been really interesting. What I think is also really interesting is the thing that the internet also did was a thing that was very underground because you had to like meet in person to exchange zines became much more accessible to the mainstream, and fandom became much more both mainstream acceptable and mainstream known about, which I think is a double-edged sword and really interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, the double-edged sword of it is like all of a sudden, like, not that capitalism was never there, but like in a really aggressive way. I feel like capitalism, co-opted a lot of fandom, right? Um, because of the visibility and like because you all of a sudden have this like audience you're looking for the thing that you are making. And I get it from like a marketing standpoint of like, yeah, these are the people we want to be talking to. But you also, I think, if you're coming at it from that perspective, have to understand the space you're coming into. And a lot of people didn't. Like, a lot of people just saw it as sort of like captive audience, let's take advantage, versus like, this is a really engaged group of people who love the thing. Like, how can we continue to foster that engagement? that is beneficial to both the community and to the thing we're creating. And it is like it has been incredible. Like I feel very lucky to have grown up on the internet the way I grew up, because I think I learned a lot by coming into it at such a young age, both in the terms of like I like can fully look to fandom as the reason as the basis for so many of the skills I have now. Like I do a lot of IP writing. I write for Marvel, I've written for Star Wars, I've written for DC, which is not like the only difference between what I do in fanfic is like mine is sanctioned by the company that owns the IP. But like I was able to do that because I grew up writing fan fiction and understanding how to play in someone else's sandbox with characters that I didn't create and worlds I didn't create. And so fandom has like had a huge impact on my life, not just from like a wider lens of like, oh, I write Spider-Man, but from like a micro lens of like, you literally taught me the tools I need to succeed in the world as we see it now.
I agree, and I also think it's like not just like those skills, right? Like I think of fandom too as being like almost cutting edge internet. Like things will happen in fandom way before they'll happen in like mainstream world. So like cons, right? Like the convention cons. Like when you see things like Firefest or whatever, you're like, fandom did that 10 years ago. Like we developed the ability to make these evaluations because we already had that scandal, or like faking your death or faking an illness, or like all of these, like I feel like the ability to spot like a sock puppet or like those kinds of things is a thing that's like in an age where there's a lot of weird shit online. Sorry, I know I'm the one who said we shouldn't curse and I just did it. When there's a lot of weird stuff going on online and there's a lot of toxic things going online, actually, the skills I got in fandom is what helped me sort what's happening from what's bad. Which is really interesting because now I think fandom is weirdly less sophisticated in that than it used to be.
Well, it's bigger now, right? It's like you said, like now there's not as much stigma attached to being into the, I guess we should say this is more like on the nerd side in terms of like stereotypical or traditionally like nerd fandoms are now way more mainstream, way more accepted. It's not it's like awesome for people to like show their cosplay off, right? It's like not this like weird thing that the weird kid in your school is doing. It's like everyone's into it. I read this thing on Tumblr like a million years ago that was like 1% of the people in any fandom suck. Like they just aren't fun to be around. They don't get it. They're like awful. So like the bigger the fandom, the more of those people you're going to find. It's like that 1% can be two people, you know, in a 200 per math, whatever. It cannot be as small as that. But if you're in this like massive, which we are now, whether it's like anime or Star Wars or whatever it is, it's all very mainstream and it's all very cool for everybody. So I think it's going to be less sophisticated because it's a much, much wider net. Like it used to be where you had these, like, I think I was in like a Backstreet Boys, like AOL chat that was like 30 people. And that was a lot. Like that was a lot for us, right? Now you're looking at like 30,000.
I was in a like small group for like a very specific subset of Star Trek fans, and all of us were like underage, and there was like one adult whose job it was to like be an adult in this space, and like thinking about that, and that was like 15, 20 people. It's so wildly different now. And like in some ways that's great because it means your chance of finding someone like you is higher because there's more people. But then the chance for you to like grow up and mature in a space and like not feel like 1,000 people are gonna say a thing about it is a little bit more diminished.
It's easier to find it. Yeah, I mean it's anything. It's anything that's going to go from these like smaller spaces to bigger ones. You're just going to have more challenges just by virtue of more voices, more, you know, opinions. Also, not even to talk about who gets the attention, whose voice is heard in these massive spaces and whose aren't, so everything has its ups and downs. I think there have been a lot of benefits to sort of the mainstreamification of fandom in terms of like you get to be very vocal and visible about what you're into, and people by and large aren't going to be weirdos about it. And then there's the other side of
And also the like fear that you're going to get, the Anne Rice fear that everyone carried with them from who are fans of a certain age, even if you were not in the Anne Rice fandom, which I wasn't, but you were in fandom at all at a certain
you
time. You
know,
knew what that was and why you had to be afraid of
and
it.
why we all like why for years we had disclaimers in our fan fiction.
I've said this before. As someone who has now gone to law school and like learned copyright law, it's fascinating to me because it's basically folk magic.
It
Like
doesn't mean
it doesn't
anything.
do anything. It's just like a prayer. It's like a hey, I'm just a fan. For the love of God, leave me alone.
But like we all like 19 years old. I was like, full disclosure, I don't own anything. This is just for fun.
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting. I think yeah, and I think because I've talked about this in things I've written, the acceptance is good, but like for some people, it's become a goal and a way of being like my headcanon is more valid because of XYZ.
Do you think that's unique to fandom though? Because I think that's the internet.
I think that's the internet, but what I think is not unique to fandom, but the thing that it's like perverting about fandom is like the idea that like mine's more valid, which is like that's always been the case, right? Like canon was whatever they wanted it to be, and you may have guessed right, or the thing you wanted may have happened. That shouldn't mean that you are better than, and to not recognize that like yeah, certain things are going to be accepted by the studios and certain things are going to be ignored because of some calculus they made.
Yeah, I feel like that to me that is like a media literacy and an internet problem more so than like an individual sort of like person's problem, because we are in this state right now where we have like not we but like people with vested interest in doing so have monetized hate, they've monetized rage, they've monetized anger on the internet in a way that has been like, this is how you get attention, this is how you uh make sure your voice is heard, this is what you are entitled to, is sort of the messaging that is going out in a very strange way, and there's not enough understanding or literacy to combat it. And so you have this entire like sort of uh, segment of the population that truly feels fully entitled to not only like, this is my belief, this is my headcanon, this is what should be true, and if it's not true I'm gonna like go attack every single person who's involved, however tertiary. But it's like put us all in this bizarre position of like, I was talking to somebody about this recently about reviewing, like I don't use Goodreads anymore. I stopped using Goodreads when Amazon bought them, but I don't use review aggregates because I find them to be extremely frustrating, because we've walked away from like, I have a specific knowledge base that will help guide people who have similar tastes to mine whether or not they might want to read this book. And now it's, no, I need to put my opinion up, period, because I need my opinion to be visible. And we've turned things into like, this isn't for me means it's 1 star. But like to me, the goal of a review and the goal of a critic isn't to pan something. It's to say, hey, like I remember you used to have critics that you liked. Like I had movie critics where I was like, we have similar tastes. So I can look to this person and see what they've said about a movie because maybe we'll have a similar reaction to it. Now it's just like, you know.
I agree because I think when I would write reviews of anything, my way of approaching it was always, you know, everyone in this world, especially fans, have like a finite amount of time and money
Mm-hmm.
in their
Yeah.
life. And my goal is to give them a guide to figure out if this thing is worth their time and money for them, not like for me, a person who got to see it for free and paid to and is paid to do
Yeah.
it, right? Like that's a different thing.
But you're coming at it from a place of expertise, right? Like you're coming at it like
Yeah.
I wrote reviews for a living. I wrote like people paid me to write about things. They're not paying me, no one was paying me to review a horror movie because I am not a fan of horror movies. I don't like being scared. I literally get nightmares. Like it's not for me. I would not come on and be like, "Hey, this new horror Netflix series, don't watch it," because I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have any knowledge base in the history of this genre. I can't tell you as a horror fan if you'll like it or not because I am not a horror fan. I don't know what you're looking for.
I also think too, like that bait thing you were talking about is also like why it's really hard to give a 2 or 3 star review now. It has to be either the best thing or the worst thing. There is no like. I remember my review of like Blade Runner 2046 was like, listen, there were like 5 stories in it, and I think 3 of them are really great, and I think 2 of them are weird. It's really difficult to evaluate because it's very long, the movie, but like if you're into these things, you might be into it, but like you might find that you've wasted your time. It's very difficult to tell based on it's going to depend very heavily on your experience. And like it wasn't a review that caught fire because it wasn't like
I hate
this is
this.
great or this is bad. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
It was like
it's sad.
you it's like I think I even started like, have you ever stayed up till 3 a.m. to finish a fanfic and then like not been sure if it was worth doing that or not? That's kind of what this movie is like.
But there's yeah, no, I feel like this is just a really big conversation because there's so many things that contribute to the way we interact online and to the way we now interact with like entertainment and fandom. Like I have very much like my fandom now in terms of something I'm really into, something I'm really excited about, I engage with it with like a much smaller group of friends than I used to. I've actually gone back because like you said, like now it's like so much bigger that like you really don't know what you're going to get if you're stepping into a massive online fandom space. That to me, especially as someone who is also a creator, it's not worth the risk of kind of that side of things. So like my fandom experience in terms of other fans is extremely curated. It is like with my friends in my group chats. It is not online unless it's literally just me being like, I loved this thing and I want more people to watch it because I want more of it.
I think that self curation is a skill that is incredibly important and not enough people do. And I think if people self curated more, the internet ecosystem would be healthier for them.
Yes. Yes.
Like I always tell people, like when I had Twitter before it was X, I was like, I have rules, which is like I follow people that I know, or people that I've talked to, or people like that are friends of friends in the field that I am in, so that when I logged on, it was because of the period of time in which I joined Twitter. It was all my friends who were journalists is what popped up there, or all my friends who were writers. And it created an ecosystem for me, which was really helpful because like if all of them are talking about a news story and I know them all and I trust them all because I know who they are, it was a story I would go look at, right? Like, and of course, like insular communities can also doom spiral pretty fast
Yes.
in terms of like getting really upset about something. But it was a system in which you could yell about a thing and not feel as in danger in a way. And like I think it's weird because like on one hand, I think it's a skill not enough people have, but weirdly, I think we're actually like looping back around because of the way people are moving to things like
Mhm.
Discord or like these much more closed systems that aren't. I think there's a huge difference between like a system that's closed and a system where technically anyone can see it even if they're not part of the thing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think you have to, when you're on sort of like public facing social, you I operate under the assumption that anyone can see what I say and they can take it out of context because they don't know who I am. They don't have the understanding of who I am as a person, so they will literally only see the words that they see on the screen and they will give it whatever context they want to give it, which is part of why I've like moved my fandom largely offline or to Discords. Um, because it's like it's that one-two punch of like I try to also avoid this, but there's a tendency because of how negativity is monetized online that I think a lot of people kind of go into it reading things in the worst possible context and the worst possible light because that is what we've been taught to do and that is what they, people who monetize these things want the viewer and the reader to do, and that's a really hard impulse to like stop. Like I've stopped sort of like I don't enter the discourse with strangers if I like you said earlier, like if I'm not paid to like give an opinion, like I'm not gonna engage with strangers on giving my opinion because it's not worth my time. I'm like, I don't know you. Like I have friends to talk to about these things, which is not to say like I don't talk to strangers, like especially about like fun, good things that are enjoyable. But like I'm not gonna spend my time fighting with someone on the internet who I don't know because why would I spend my time like that? But I think there is a sense of like there is this like sort of less evolved viewpoint of like, well, if you don't fight about it, you don't care about it. Like you're not brave enough, you don't believe enough in what you're saying. And I'm like, that's not what this is. That's like the internet could be a space of like community and connection and communication if that's what we were coming into it with. Like if that's the want we want out of it.
I think there's this really interesting like chicken and egg situation with social media where it's like they've monetized rage, but we feed into it because what we've told them is that that's the thing we're going to look at. And so like they keep feeding it and but we keep like it is bad and it is also like an instinct that humans have to learn to short circuit as well. Like it's a weird like if everyone had only engaged in positive things, that's not what the algorithm would have thing. And like, yes, I fully believe like you have a responsibility to be like that's not an impulse that I want to encourage as a company, but like it is a feedback loop and I'm not saying both sides are equally to blame, but it is a feedback loop.
You know what's wild though is that like from and I'm speaking, from like someone who writes books and we talk a lot about discoverability and how people find out about books. And the
Mm-hmm.
number one way, like the number one way people learn about books is word of mouth because it's people talking about something they loved. That has been for decades, like for probably like a century. Like the best way to for a book to succeed is word of mouth, people just talking about what they love. Like it is human nature to talk about the things we like. So I don't know because I do think there's a shift and I don't know if it's human nature feeding into that negative impulse or like you said chicken and the egg, is it because the internet trained us in this way to
Yeah.
participate ag- with faceless strangers in a certain way that you wouldn't engage with them in that way in the real world. So like I don't know because I also think that it is human nature to like that's what fandom is. That is what people connecting in fandom is just joy and love for the thing that you all like, right? It is a shared community of excitement and passion and joy. And so like I don't know. It's hard. It's like there are these two warring
I
factions, right?
and I think part of that too is like one of the things that's sort of broken it is like the idea that I can argue with you about some point in fandom and it's not about you as a person.
Right. I mean, we have personalized, we have,
Like at my at Gawker Media, we would have the dumbest fights all the time, and it was just for like fun. Like it's fun to argue about what season is the best. A thing that led to like
yeah,
a screaming war, and like no one took that personally because why would you take that personally? That's pointless. We also once had a fight about whether or not you have a top sheet on your bed. Like those things don't define you, so you should be able to enjoy, and you might learn something and have a fun time or have something funny come out of that.
exactly. Like when you're on the internet, like you so easily can become defined by that thing. Like you are not presenting yourself as a whole human being. You are presenting a piece, a sliver of yourself in a digital space where people can't truly know you. Like I say this all the time, is like, you have no idea what's going on in someone's life just based on what you've read online. Like you don't know. You cannot possibly know the full spectrum of who they are as a person. And so people are cut down to these like slices of identity, and they start to feel so protective and so entitled over that it does turn into this like, oh, because you don't like this character I like, you're attacking me. Like you think you don't like Kylo Ren, like you're a bad person, right? Like it turns into these like sort of stakes for things that shouldn't have those level of stakes. And part of it is also tied into like the vitriol certain characters experience because of the backgrounds of the people who play them or the characters who are written or whatever it is. It all gets flattened into one conversation. It's like there's no room for nuance in terms of like saying I like this character and I don't like this character isn't the same as like I don't like that character because they're Indian. Like, but it all gets flattened into this like one conversation.
It is truly wild to me, and I this was always weird to me, and it may just be like I just don't think this way. Um, because this I think there has been for a long time, right? Like cults of celebrity and people identifying like people like the people behind a thing with the thing they made. But like I've never in my life been like I like this character, therefore I love this actor as a person. I don't know them. I may know the character because they've been written and I've spent hours with them, but like I don't know that person, so I don't like outside of it like maybe thinking they're a good actor or if they have committed some horrifying crime, like it just never occurred to me to care that much to attack that person. Um and like I think some
Well, I was gonna say I can remember being a teenager, and again, like this is height of boy band wars. This is like Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC, and that stuff got dirty and it got mean for a lot of people. Like it got vitriolic, right? I had the benefit of one of my best friends in high school was a huge NSYNC fan, and I was a huge Backstreet Boys fan. So we like sort of made a joke out of it because it was like, this is so silly. Like it's just like we do really like the groups that we like, but like we made fun of each other. Like we just teased about it. It was never like this horrible thing. But I think this cult of celebrity has been a thing for a long time. The difference is I think it's harder to grow out of now because there is such a high level of curated accessibility to those real life people that it does start to feel very personal, and this is like bringing like the sort of parasocial relationship aspect of it that the internet has done nothing but like exacerbate, where we should at some point have this maturity of realizing of like, oh, I might have seen every movie this person has been in, but like I do not know them. I know the face that they are presenting to the public, but that is all I know about them. But that sort of like shift in understanding has been diminished, I think, by a lot of things. By like again, like a lack of media literacy and just the level of accessibility that we have to these celebrities now.
and I think people like some and again sort of media literacy and accessibility like you don't necessarily, especially if you're young and then are never trained out of it, don't make the connection that that accessibility is curated
Right.
rather than because yours may not be, right? Like you as a normal person, the things you post online that no one's really paying attention to is whatever you feel. And so you don't think about how much more curated someone with reach their thing
Mm-hmm.
is. And I think that that part of like that thought, I mean, I always joke like one of the advantages of having grown up in Los Angeles, which I did, is the like full understanding that you will see a famous person doing something you would never see and that they have a life you don't see. Like you just sort of pick that up ambiently in a way that like is impossible in other ways if you're not told it and taught it, right?
I mean, I think also part of it is like growing up on the internet at the time we grew up on it, which was like a lot of mistrust, a lot of like you kept your secrets close. Like, again, I didn't join Facebook forever because it was like you have to put your real name on there. I was like, excuse me? You want to know my name and where I go to school? That is bananas that you are expecting me to share that level of information with you. And so there is this like constant mistrust in the back of my head of like strangers that I'm like, you could be anyone. Like, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. There's no reason for me to trust that you are who you say you are. There's no like validation that's happening. It's completely, you could be anybody. And part of it is because we grew up at a time when it was like, you don't give strangers on the internet any personal information about yourself or they'll come to your house.
And I think that mistrust, I think the good side of that mistrust, like a way of putting it that's like a little bit more positive, is not just mistrust, but it's also just like I only know this person in this context,
Yes,
and that's the
exactly.
only context in which I need to trust their information. I
Exactly.
don't need, if they say something that's not about this thing, I don't need to care about that. That's not why I
Exactly.
know this person. Like,
I'm like, I don't know
and
you.
it's
I
a
don't
thing,
know
like,
it.
I think, and I think it's actually a huge, like, cultural shift writ large, not just internet, not just fandom, right? Where it's like, everything I do has to be my whole self. I have to, I have, like, my job has to be my whole self.
Right.
My day to day is my whole self, right? And I have to present everything to everyone, like, so that they all know me everywhere. It's like, you don't
You
have to
don't.
do that. And I think, like, your work can just be your work. Like,
I,
I mean, that's a joke for both of us who have turned things we're really passionate about into our work, but like,
but it is.
it that does not have to be
Right.
you.
And even with that, even with how I've turned passionate things into my job, like we talked about it earlier, there are pieces that I hold back from that side. And there's always going to be things where you're like, this is not for consumption. And it's so much harder now, especially as like when you're working in a creative field. And speaking of like cult of celebrity, there's an expectation that you are using yourself as part of the marketing, as part of the commodity. There's an expectation that you will take your personal spaces and use them to promote work that you've done with an outside company, because failure is meaning you might not get to do this thing that you love again, right? So there's all these other layers to what you're presenting online and what your spaces are online from a professional standpoint also. But like, I fully am like, do not put your whole self online ever. Like, don't, like, keep stuff back for yourself. Like, keep stuff that is, don't, it's such a difficult thing because I can't imagine growing up on the internet that we have today. Like, I cannot fathom what it would have done to my ability or my, there's so many good things that have come of it in the same way that good things came of when I was on the internet as a kid. But like, I can't fathom like how I would view the world with the internet that exists today if that had been what had shaped my understanding of communication and presentation.
If I had to be public facing at all points of my life, I don't know how I would have done it. Like, even just the idea that, like, the camera phone being able to film video didn't happen for me until the last year of college. And thank God for that. Because, like, you're at your dumbest between the ages of like 18
I
and
legit,
22.
like yesterday, was like, I'm so glad that the only place I had to put my ideas online as like a 19-year-old was LiveJournal. Like, friends only, locked behind a password, because it was like, I thought I knew everything. And this is not to say that, like, there aren't, I mean, there are incredible ways that I think the generations behind mine are using the internet to organize and to like build communities, and even the way they use it for fandom I think is awesome. But I am glad that I didn't have that level of pressure of needing to exist in a public space, like public facing way, before I understood what that meant. And maybe there's although we see it now with like kids who are sort of old enough now, whose parents put them on the internet as too young, and they're sort of like, this is not okay, you shouldn't be doing this to children, before they have the ability to consent to be doing it, which I agree with wholeheartedly. So I don't know, we're in a unique space.
But I also think of it as like a full circle thing. I was like, we solved that problem with child actors. Like, there's a reason that kids'
Yeah.
money has to go into a bank account for them when they're old enough. Like, we learned this lesson a long time ago. And one of the things that I talk about at EFF all the time is like, these rules that we have when we learned these lessons shouldn't be bound to a specific
Right.
technology or a specific format.
Yeah.
Because we already learned the lesson, so it needs to carry forward so that the ecosystem that grows next is a new one and not the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are things that we should be doing to, like I say this about like competition, for example, right? Like when you and I are roughly the same age, growing up on the internet, spaces were small because spaces were maintained by a few people.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a major corporation who ran the biggest one that you had to be on in order to be a full participant in society,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're not on Facebook, or if especially if you're a business, like a small business, if you're not on certain things, you don't exist
Right.
as far as your business is concerned. But if nothing was allowed to grow to be that size, you would have many curated things to choose from for yourself. And if that had been the rules of the ecosystem when the stuff was happening, that would have been, we would have just grown a better thing. And so it's not just about fixing the past, it's about making sure those rules are there in the future for whatever new thing pops up so that we don't have to do this over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Sorry, that's my little soapbox in my role as someone who writes about like labor in my private time, and then in my work time stare at the internet and stare at policy and just start screaming. And so I think, yeah, I think there are good things and bad things, and you gotta focus on those things. There are so many people who have a voice now or have the ability to critique something who wouldn't have before in formats that you wouldn't have been able to do it before. Like, YouTubers get to do things that used to be the like exclusive domain of a studio, right? That could make it and then had control over it. And I think that's a good thing.
I think like anything, the internet is not the thing to be mad at. It is the way we use it, and that is how we want to approach these things. And there are like incredible, like I wouldn't have the life I have without the internet. That is 100% certain, because I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have had access to the information I needed to even know that this kind of life was a possibility, beyond the level of like access it gave me and visibility it gave me for like editors and that sort of thing. But it's just,
yeah,
right?
I agree.
It's approaching it.
I joke at work all the time, like the internet was a mistake, but my entire career has been built on it, and without it, I know both my parents were lawyers. I would have continued on the assumption that that was the only path forward for me. because that's what my parents did, right? And it is useful to be able to connect to other people, and not just like in the fandom space, but the ability to like watch other people doing other jobs and to think,
Yes.
do I want to do that, or does that make sense to me?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have those skills and I didn't realize it? Like, those are really important, valuable things.
Yep.
And I think part of the flattening, but also like because of the monetization of a lot of that and the way that companies are like, I was also really lucky, and I bet you were too, that in the phase in which I came up in sort of more corporate profit driven things, people there had the time and ability to mentor me too and to edit me and to like run me. Like I used to do a thing on Twitter where every time like a terrible story would come out by someone you'd never heard of, I would have been like, where was the editor to save this person from themselves?
Yes.
The number of times editors saved me, like, that's an important step that I think we're also losing, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that there are. And again, it just comes down to, I think, how we use it, and needing to sort of like have an updated idea of what media literacy is. I know I've said it like 30 times already today, but like genuinely, I think it is the defining thing that we should be teaching literally everybody. Like, everything is getting harder to parse. The truthfulness of it, the validity of it, like, it is not easy to look at the internet and know what's real at all, right? And that has far reaching implications beyond just like, oh, I looked at a deep fake video and I thought it was real. It's people, like you said, who are looking at curated experiences and assuming that that is the whole truth, and that nothing outside of that could be true because they've seen 17 TikTok videos from this one influencer or whatever.
No, I was gonna say, I think that's really important. I think because a lot of times the solutions that we keep seeing is like, well, just ban that kind of content. I'm
No,
like, they're moving faster than you. They're gonna find another way to do it.
right.
So instead, you gotta give people tools to shut it down on their own. Like, just banning that kind of thing does not work. That's not how the technology works. It's not how humans work. Like, it's just not how you're going to fix this problem.
Yep. And like, no one is perfect. Like,
Um,
I know there are times that I have like reposted something that like 2 seconds later I'll be like, oh, that was not real. Let me get rid of that. But like, because it is genuinely really, really hard. But we right now, I feel like we're doing 5% when we need to be doing like 90% in terms of like how much we have to go on teaching people how to engage on like with the internet.
so you've been writing a lot of things. I know you have like a book coming out and all of those things. Let's talk about that and talk about how this sort of life has informed all those things.
Sure. I have a YA novel coming out in September. It is a romantic comedy, enemies to lovers. It's called Bile Mehta's Romance. No, that's not the title. It's called Bile Mehta's Romance Revenge Plot. It's a long title. Um, and it's actually pretty informed by a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of like, when I soft pitch this book, like jokingly, it's like it's a romantic comedy through the lens of microaggressions, because I think it's really important to be able to have awkward, weird conversations as kids without needing, decades of theory influencing the way you talk about something. Like, I had the worst conversations about racism when I was in high school because we didn't know how to talk about it. Like, we like made fun of it in probably ways that are like crass or like whatever, but like it was taking ownership of something that we experienced as like brown kids in a post 9/11 world, and interacting with it in a way that we understood how to interact with. So this is a romantic comedy, but it is very much about a kid who's like dealing with identity and slicing up pieces of herself to make herself more palatable, or what she thinks is more palatable for, someone outside of her community, and whether that, like, how that can impact somebody. But it's also very funny, I will say. I had a friend who was reading it, and the text I got was, "This is so funny, I'm gonna fight you." And I was like, yes.
Uh, what I think was also really interesting is the way you described it as like enemies to lovers. Like, there's another like form of thing that I think is really interesting about the way online discourse is like you tag things with tropes, and tropes are not bad. Like, it's not about
That's
not
very
knowing where
big.
you're headed. It's about like enjoying the ride.
I mean, that's a romantic comedy. Like, it's so funny. I'll see people who are irritated with specific, and like not my book necessarily, but like just in terms of like romantic comedies, they'll be like, I knew how it was gonna end. Duh. Like, it's a romantic comedy. Like, yeah, you think I walked into like 2 weeks notice not knowing that Hugh Grant and Sandra Bullock were gonna end up together? It's the journey.
Well, the thing that I always tell people is, do you know what was a huge twist at the time? That Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde were the same person. No one knew that when the book came out, and it was a huge twist. Does that mean you don't read it now? That's not how anything works.
But it's like, it's you go to different kinds of stories for different reasons. Like, that's just true. Like, I'm not getting the same thing necessarily out of a rom-com that I'm getting out of, like, I don't know, I can't even, like, an action movie. There's overlap, obviously there can be overlap, but like, I'm not necessarily looking towards these things for the same experience, and that's okay. And so it's just so funny to me, like, when there are frustrations with the genre for participating in hallmarks of the genre.
Like, what do you think a genre is if it's not a group of characteristics that they share? Like, but what I was going to say that's like a positive version of that, like some people do that, but the other thing is like, because we've now given names to, and like they're commonly known, they're not just like what you learn in film school, people can like be like, I like this thing, and I can go find it because I know what it's called. And I think that's a positive thing. Like, enemies to lovers, all of these like things that are like a form, not just like a romantic comedy, but a romantic comedy with this specific kind of plot, I think is a thing that is really great and helping people uh, pin things down. So I'm going to wrap this up with, when does the book come out? And if people want to find other things from you, where would they do that?
The book comes out on September 24th. If you pre-order it, I am sending stickers and a signed book plate. You go to bit.ly/bile preorder, and that'll bring the form up. You can also find me. I have a ton of comics out from Marvel. I just had this summer a one-shot X-Men Blood Hunt, or Blood Hunt X-Men Jubilee, #1, which was really fun to write. So if you want to look for comics that I've written, they are all on the internet. And you can find me on Desi Geek Girls and Tar Valor Bust if you're a Wheel of Time fan, or the official Marvel podcast if you are into anything Marvel puts out. But yeah, other than that, you can find me on social, mostly Blue Sky and Instagram these days, at Run with Skizzers. And my website, preetichhibber.com, if you want to learn more about stuff I've written, whether it's like silly little posts for geek culture sites or any of the books or short stories I've put out.
Great. Thank you so much.